the main concern would be something like SPHE because it's such a
Mhm,
sensitive area and it covers, very sensitive material potentially,
mhm.
and CSPE, which is very political. So those are the first two that I think parents should focus on.
Yes.
And that's not to say that stuff isn't creeping into history books or geography books or English books
Mhm.
or elsewhere. Paulo Freire says that all education is political. The ASTI are making the exact same recommendation Alan Hines is making. Don't use the SPHE books, use the online resources. They don't mention the Living Love resources, but if you're Catholic school, you should use them. Any other school can use them as well. And don't use the books.
Good afternoon, Eugene. How are you?
I'm great, Jana. How are you?
Great, great. Things are moving so quickly. So, for those who don't haven't tuned in before, I'm Jana London, founder of the Natural Women's Council, and Eugene Garvin is a retired director of an engineering firm and does much of the research and deep dives. So we can package up everything that's happening and put it in the most concise, uh, message to our listeners, so they can make sense of what's happening. And today, we're going to give an overall update, a short update, hopefully about less than 30 minutes, on what's happening in the Irish education system. We did our back to school refresher. So anyone who hasn't had a chance to watch that, we did a back to school refresher a couple of weeks ago when school started, and we've gotten great feedback and a lot of views on that. So today we're going to talk about the books controversy, senior cycle updates, the teaching SPHE. We'll do another critique of the WHO standards for sexuality education. So, Eugene, I'll turn it over to you to talk about the books controversy. And it's surely been a busy week with this. And this news made it around the world. This was a global outrage over this, the book controversy here in Ireland.
Yeah, absolutely, Jana, which is great. It was covered a lot by a lot of other YouTube channels, etc. And it was great to see. I suppose it,
Mm-hmm.
it highlighted an issue. It didn't fully address all the issues with regard to the book. There was other things in that very same book which parents would have probably found objectionable, but may
Mm-hmm.
not have realized was there. I guess that's been highlighted by people like David Quinn in his article, and you did a video as well on that SPHE book, which is great. And I think it's just symptomatic. It's this is by no means the end of the story. And I know Carl Nolan has kind of highlighted that as well
Mm-hmm.
in the script article, calling for a full comprehensive review. And I think do need that because we know that the CSPE books, for
Mm-hmm.
example, are problematic, and we'll cover those in a separate video. All of the SPHE books are problematic for various varying reasons, and we'll allude to some of that a little bit later on. So I
And
think there is a
Eugene, I
need
think
for.
this publisher is that it's sort of they're being used as a scapegoat. So two things I
Yeah,
would just ask and ask our listeners to question is, why didn't Norma Foley apologize? We'll talk about the sign off or lack thereof and shortly. But Norma
yeah.
Foley, Minister for Education, didn't apologize. The NCCA didn't apologize. The publisher apologized, but they simply just print what's given to them to print. They're just a print job. So that's a question. And then the other question I would ask is, will this make parents look beneath the pages of all of their children's school books? Hopefully, they don't just focus on the anti-Irish book. Hopefully, they open the pages and ask the school to see all of the children's books. It's a right we have as parents to ask for that material and look through all of the pages, because this is just the tip of a very, very large iceberg.
Correct, it is. So the two main areas of concern, I suppose the main concern would be something like SPHE because it's such a
Mm-hmm.
sensitive area and it covers, very sensitive material potentially,
Mm-hmm.
and CSPE, which is very political. So those are the first two that I think parents should focus on.
Yes.
And that's not to say that stuff isn't creeping into history books or geography books or English books
Mm-hmm.
or elsewhere. Because in the modern term, nothing is neutral. Paulo Freire says that all education is political, and that's kind of unfortunately what's happening right now. It
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be because that's taking away from education, but unfortunately it is. So we'll get into it in more detail. I guess it has drawn attention to the books, and this is a bit from the article that that David Quinn did, he did allude to other content talking about gender, the notion of gender, inclusion, diversity, and what that means, etc. Things that are controversial potentially for a lot of parents and may not have awareness that that stuff has been taught to their children as a matter of fact, not as an opinion that some people have and that we should be accepting of. It's been taught as a matter of fact, and you've got to accept it. That's the problem.
And
So,
when I was on with Eddie Hobbs earlier in the week, he made a really good point that how can a child go from a biology class where they are taught there's two sexes and they're taught the facts and the science, and then the next hour they go into this class teaching them that there's multiple genders and you can be who you want to be regardless of your sex at birth. It completely contradicts what they're taught in the real classes, and it blurs reality. That's the main thing it's going to do to children, is it's going to make them question everything, question their sense of belonging, and blur reality for that child.
Yeah. No. So the word inclusion is it's one of those bad words. It's not acceptance. It's not tolerance. It's not it's in some cases it's celebration. It's you can use other terms for it, but basically it's asking you to accept something that you may not agree with, and that you have to take it on board.
And you have to be an ally for all of the children who do get led down this dangerous path of transgenderism and thinking they're in the wrong body. They have the allyship. So not only do you may not believe in it due to your, you believe in biology or you have faith, you don't believe you can change sex, but you have to be an ally for anyone who is confused. You have to go along with it, or you will be considered phobic, full of hate, or a bigot. We've had concerned parents contact us to say their child feels bullied, excluded, and anxious in the classroom because they're being forced to participate in this ideology being pushed in the classroom.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's not inclusive.
No.
Like, guys, I'm sorry, it isn't. That the term has been misused right now, and we need to push back on it. So these are the books. You can view some of these books. So the good news is that Gill Education, at their website, gilleducation.ie, they do have electronic versions of these books. So you can actually go in and page through them and take a look at them, including the infamous, you've got this book too. If you want to take a look at the section on masturbation, etc., that's in that book, that egregious section. So take a look at that. There's a call for action book, which is the CSPE book. We'll take a very quick look through it on the next slide. But I guess the main point we were highlighting here is there's no sign off on these books. The curriculum is published. The publishers work on the books in parallel, and they publish them and offer them to the schools. And the schools then choose which books they want to take. But nobody validates that the books correspond with the curriculum. Nobody signs off on them. And we know, and the point is raised later on, we talk about it later on, is that there was aspects of the SPHE curriculum that were dropped, but they were still in the books because the books were published, were printed before the curriculum was finalized. So there's an issue there. So the books do not correspond to the curriculum. You're not being taught what the actual curriculum is. You've been taught something else. So this is the issue. And ultimately, I think, Jana, we're all of one mind. This is owned by the minister. This is owned by the Department of Education and the NCCA, and one of them needs to figure out who's going to approve the books.
No, it's time for Norma Foley to stop pointing fingers. Norma Foley pointing to the NCCA pointing to the publisher. Norma Foley is the one, as Minister for Education, that is 100% accountable for everything happening in her department. Full stop. The finger pointing has to stop. Gaslighting the public has to stop. Children are being harmed.
Yeah. I mean, for all the, employ a couple of extra people. I think we'd all be happy with that. That we wouldn't have an issue with that. That would be people who would be well versed on the curriculum and then would vet the books and sign off on them. And then any teacher in any school knows that regardless of which book I take, it's going to be in line with the curriculum. And it's just
And for Norma Foley and the NCCA to point us to the publisher, that's saying to parents that Oh, so the publisher can just publish what they want. So you could have a publisher that is going to just go rogue and put whatever they want in our children's books without Minister Foley or the NCCA approving.
Yeah.
That's ludicrous. That's a big fat lie. And we're going to do freedom of information requests to find out exactly who signed off on these books. And we will publish and name and call it out.
Yeah, yeah. So there we go. So you can purchase the books as well. There's a link here. We're not sponsored by these people or anything. There's just one link. There may be others. If you know of other links, please send them in and we'll publish them. So that's that one on the books. And this is just a quick look through the CSPE book. The headlines are in line with the outline curriculum. The issue is the detail. So, and this is where, if you look at some of the sub bullets in there, there's a huge focus on rights, right? There's an awful lot of stuff going on rights here, probably more than I would have thought was necessary, to be honest. I'm not sure why they're kind of pushing it so much. And then the whole area of global citizenship, you can see that. And that even brings in aspects of sustainability, etc., plastic bottles and stuff like that. So, again, some of that's fine, and some of it may be very politically driven. And then the whole area of democracy. So, as you can see, depending on how specific the curriculum is, there's a lot of leeway here. So a publisher could publish a book that was very much left-leaning or right-leaning or whatever, based on their own political views. And if that's not been checked at any point in time, well, then that's going to get out there, and that's what's going to go to kids in the classroom. So this is why you have to police this.
And children, we know from the SPHE that children are getting taught things that don't align with the parents' moral conscience or best interest either, like the adult fetishes. We've been very vocal on those, that content. But the CSPE, and we will do another deep dive in this is politicizing the classroom. It is pushing global political views onto a child that may actually contradict the political views of that family. So your child is being politicized and led down into, I mean, look at some of the topics there. We have the case studies, we have, talking about Gaza. But what if that parent has a different view on the crisis happening in Gaza? So your child is being indoctrinated with things that contradict the parent's view.
This is why it's a concern. So we'll revisit this. We're going to cover this book and one of the other main books, and we'll do that in a separate video, and we'll step through it in more detail. So let's talk about the senior cycle, Jana. I guess the first thing is the specification has been published, so it's available. We'll have a link in the description so you can check it out for Senior Cycle SPHE. And there's been this information note was issued recently, and I suppose this information note clarifies a few things, and we'll get into that in a minute. I want to highlight one of the paragraphs or sections in the information note on inclusivity. So on that same theme that we were just talking about. So here it talks about halfway through here, human rights and responsibilities, one that is inclusive of all genders. So if you are somebody in a faith-based school, you'll only be talking about 2 genders. That's basically it. So if you're going to be asked to accept that there's 9 genders or 50 genders or something, or a spectrum of genders, you're not going to accept that, and you shouldn't have to accept that. This is the issue. So this is the problem with inclusivity and inclusion, these terms that we're using very freely. Now, the second point I want to highlight here is it looks like Peter Tatchell has had an influence on this curriculum, because it talks about the curriculum states that learning outcomes should be taught in a way that LGBTQ plus identities, relationships, and families are fully integrated and reflected in teaching and learning, as opposed to being addressed within standalone lessons.
Some of you may know that the LGBT plus group Schools Out in the UK has produced a website called theclassroom.org.uk, which has downloadable lessons which teachers can use to integrate LGBT issues into every subject. So they're not marginalised, they're integrated in mathematics, geography, and so on.
As Peter Tatchell wants to have it integrated into all subjects across all curriculum, in math, geography, history. We've already seen an activity in the school book where a child is going to be researching their favorite famous transgender or non-binary person and presenting it to the class, you could see where that could slip easily into from SPHE into a history lesson. So we really need to scrap this, and we can't accept that this is going to be infiltrating all subjects.
Yeah. So we're just flagging it. It's in the paper here, and you can see this. This is in the Canaltus material for anti-bullying. The same thing. You're being asked to accept all of this stuff and embrace it and celebrate it. Stuff that you don't believe in. Fundamentally, you don't believe in.
The children who believe there are only two sexes, which they are. The children who believe you can't change sex, which you can't. Those are the children getting bullied. We want to talk about inclusivity and anti-bullying. Those are the children like mine. Those are the children that are going to be bullied because of this ideology driven into the classroom.
Yeah, and it is ideology. It's not science. It's not science.
No.
They're portraying it as if it is, but it isn't. And it's not, and it's, as I said, it's not acceptance. This is not asking you to, be accepting of this and kind of, from that perspective. No, you have to take it on and fully embrace it and use the pronouns.
So let's be clear about this. It's not inclusive, it's not kind, and it's not anti-bullying. It's actually bullying, unkind, and exclusive to children who believe there are only two sexes, who believe you can't change sex.
Yep. So just highlighting it because people need to know. So let's move on. So the key points, I guess, from the curriculum, it's not going to be mandatory actually until 2027, the SPHE curriculum for senior cycle, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of late. I'm kind of surprised at that.
And Eugene, just to jump in, when the changes, with the consultation happened in the autumn of 2023, parents were excluded from the consultation. We pushed back onto the NCCA, stating our concern that parents were sidelined. They quietly extended the deadline by a couple of weeks, and the plan was to get these changes in for September 2024, which is now. And now it's not mandatory for another 3 years. So I would ask everyone, why do you think it's delayed? I have my own view, and I think it's because they know the public is pushing back really hard on this. I also think it's because there's a general election coming up, and they think they want to just push it to the back burner until they get voted back in.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So it has a number of things in it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a senior cycle is an older cohort of children. Like you're talking about 16, 17, maybe even 18. So the discussion is a very different discussion, obviously, I think. And the amount of time allocated is lower. It's 60 hours is what they're talking about. So it's not the same as what you're getting at junior cycle or primary. And they're bringing in things like domestic, sexual, gender violence, consent, pornography. It's kind of not surprising you're going to have those things at that age. So I have less of an issue, I'll be honest. It's more the political aspects that we're bringing into it that I didn't like when I give my feedback on it. And obviously the gender stuff, but a lot of the other stuff, you can see those being applicable to this age cohort. It is an older group. People going out into the world. It's a different story than what we've been talking about for the younger age cohort. So less of an issue. The new subjects, I guess, there's these new subjects: climate action and sustainable development, which is a full subject, and then the drama, film, and theater studies. Yeah, you could say, okay, we'll have those subjects. So long as we're not taking away other subjects, that's kind of the main issue I would have. If these are additive and they're not taking from standard subjects, then that's fine. Add them in there. Strange to see Arabic on the languages, right? I just found that one a bit strange. Is that related to the demographic in the country or something? I don't know. I'm not too sure. They've got ancient Greek in there as well, which again, I suppose it's fine. Maybe it's I wouldn't have been going for ancient Greek now. But the other issue, I suppose, with regard to is the assessment process, and I guess we've had a lingering concern that the assessment process is weakening. We've seen this equity being introduced in the Leaving Cert for the last number of years since COVID, and it's still there. It's going to be there next year as well. So they've taken that's a problem. That's a huge problem. And now they're bringing in this assessment component into subjects, at least 40%. I think it's going to be 50% for that drama, film, and theatre studies. And perhaps for a subject like that, you can see that there is a very practical aspect to that. So maybe for a subject like that, you can see it justified. I'd have my concerns about that level of assessment for other subjects, however. And I think that's been echoed by teachers and by teacher unions. We've seen this before. So the notion of bringing equity, the communist concept of equity into our education system, where you're no longer going to acknowledge the really high achievers. Are you not even going to provide a mechanism for identifying who they are, because you're going to make everything so equitable?
Yeah, as a
I think that's
parent,
a real
I
problem.
find this absolutely detrimental. It's soul destroying to a child to not be recognized for things they do well. If everyone is the same, no one is
No.
special. If everyone's the same, no one is unique. And every child should be celebrated for their own unique strengths. You
Yeah.
know, some child may be fantastic at the GAA football, others may be better at art or handwriting, but it's about celebrating each child's unique talents that they have. And if everyone's the same, no one is special, and no one has to try harder. Because if it's just going to simply be a flat line and everyone is the same, what would motivate me to actually study that bit harder, read that bit more, or practice my sport or music more to be that much better? Everyone just becomes complacent and dumbed down.
Yeah, it's a dumbing down. Like, they shouldn't be playing Robin Hood with children's grades for Leaving Cert,
No.
because that's kind of what they're doing. They're taking from the rich and giving to the poor. No, that's a problem. And the dumbing down is a huge concern, Jana. And that's the concerns teachers are really talking about. So there's positives here, but there's negatives as well, and we need to keep an eye on it. Now, we'll end on a high, right? We'll end on a high. White privilege is taken out for the senior cycle.
We have to celebrate these little wins, and that is due to public pushback. So for everyone listening, if you were one of those people that wrote a letter to the minister, your TD, to your school to push back, well done and thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So it's good to see that gone. So I think just let's not finish there, though. There are gaps, and I think we can see it here. It's been highlighted in this particular article from the Iona Institute. David Quinn highlighted on the Junior Cycle SPHE books. They're not talking about marriage or long-term commitments. So, which is consistent, I guess, with the referenda that they put to us, but not consistent with the response we gave to that referendum. So this is a problem. So we're not encouraging our children in the right direction here. We're encouraging them in a very different direction, which is not a healthy direction for the state, for the population, or for them themselves as individuals. In terms of looking for long-term commitment and fulfillment, and all the joys that can come with having a family and all that kind of thing. So we're not teaching that to children. So this is an issue, right?
It's very much a sex is for pleasure, and as long as you consent, it doesn't matter your age or anything else. As long as you consent, it's sex for pleasure, and that's what's being pushed on children. And you have to think, as Irish birth rates are at an all-time low at the moment.
Yes.
If you are just pushing sex for pleasure, free birth control for everyone, 11,000 abortions last year, euthanasia coming up, there will be no Irish left if everyone's just out having sex with God knows who, and there's no procreation, love, or marriage or family aspects put in.
Yeah. No, it's part of, it fits into a framework, unfortunately, that is consistent when you look at other aspects of what's going on in the country. So I want to talk a little bit about teaching of SPHE, because there's a couple of, maybe two main areas I want to cover here. There was an interview done by Alan Hines, who's the Catholic Education Partnership president, done on Spirit Radio. It's well worth listening to. We'll put a link in the description. So he raises a couple of points. He raises the point regarding long-term commitment to marriage. Absolutely. So very valid. He raises a very valid point regarding the Junior Cycle SPHE books. And this is the fact that the books were printed before the curriculum was finalized and incorporate aspects that were ultimately taken out, but they're still in the books. And I don't think anybody's tearing pages out of the books, as far as I'm aware, in any school. So right now, children have been exposed to material that is actually not in the curriculum that's in those books. So Alan advises, don't use the books. Don't go anywhere near any of these My Wellbeing, etc., I've Got It or whatever books. Use the material that's available on the NCCA website, the resources available there. And if you're a Catholic school, you should be supplementing that with the Catholic Living Love resources. And that's what you should be using, because that will exclude any...
It should be treated like a food product recall. Is that food
been
is poison? Let's
Yeah.
take it off the shelf.
Yeah, 100%. And how many Catholic schools are using those books, for example? So I think parents need to take this away, take Alan Hines' advice, and we're going to see advice from the ASTI to do the same on the next slide when we talk about it. So apparently, I haven't checked back, but this notion of sex assigned at birth was supposed to have been taken out from the final curriculum. But it appears in all of the books, and it appears in all of the HSE material. So that's a real issue.
It's a bit
So he says
confusing
stay
for
away from
children
the
because
books.
the last I knew from my biology class is that sex is determined in the womb at conception.
Oh yeah, I know. So here we go. So there was this, we talked about this on another previous podcast, was this correspondence from ASTI. Now, it was picked up eventually by the Irish Times. I think we covered it before they did because we saw it before they did it. So one thing we didn't pick up on, and mea culpa, we missed it, was bullet E on this information notice. So it talks about concerns that resources used should present material in line with the program specification as intended and designed. Okay, so this is the very same point that Alan Hines is making. They're basically making the point that the books aren't fit for purpose and you should use the material online from the NCCA website, basically, or from this PDST website, which is where you get the resources for teaching in the classroom. And I've checked that website, and that's what it is. So they're making, the ASTI are making the exact same recommendation Alan Hines is making. Don't use the SPHE books, use the online resources. They don't mention the Living Love resources, but if you're Catholic school, you should use them. Any other school can use them as well. And don't use the books. The books that we've been highlighting, the books that we've been going through in detail and highlighting all the issues in those books, they're basically saying, don't use those books.
They know we have a problem and we need to avoid what's out there. So they're admitting there is a problem.
Yeah. ASTI are admitting it. So there you go. And it's interesting. We're not getting this from the department. We're not getting this from the NCCA. I think this is one for parents to take. This is one to take to your school board, to your school principal, to your SPHE teacher, or if you're a teacher, this is an approach you want to bring to your school. Really important. Apologies, we didn't pick up on this point earlier. It's only when really Alan Hines highlighted and we went back and looked at it and we saw this guidance from the ASTI. This is it. So take it. So we missed this one and we're just highlighting it now. So I think it's something for people to take away. A very important takeaway. If you took nothing else away from this whole podcast, this is a big one to take out. Here's the Catholic Living Love material, just highlighting it here. And again, just reinforcing the point that gender ideology is against Catholic teaching. It's 100% against it. And we'll give you references if you need them. And to teach something like that, be it this or be promoting abortion, for example, in a Catholic school, is in contravention of Catholic canon law. Most people have never heard of canon law, probably don't have a clue. Here it is. I'll give you the article. In this section here, 803, paragraph 2, the instruction and education in a Catholic school must be grounded in the principles of Catholic teaching, and teachers are to be outstanding in correct doctrine and integrity of life. Outstanding. It's black and white. You don't teach this stuff. You don't teach abortion. You don't teach gender theory in Catholic schools. That's basically what it's saying to you. You need to be using resources that do not include those constructs, which means you need to be using resources other than the books, the standard books.
And Eugene, just to clarify then, so I wasn't raised Catholic, but my children do go to a primary Catholic school and we're very happy with the ethos there. So every school that is under the Catholic ethos is mandated to go under the Catholic Code of Canon Law. Is that right? Every school out there, which is about 90%
That's correct.
of primary
No,
schools.
it's the local bishop who is responsible for basically endorsing that school is a Catholic ethos school, and to oversee that. And if they're not that, then there's something else. And the important thing for parents is that they know what they're sending their children, what school they're sending their children to. If they think they're sending it to a Catholic school, they have a right to expect this. If it's not a Catholic school, that's fine. They can be teaching all the other stuff. Now, not that the other stuff is correct, but it's outside the remit of the bishop or whatever, outside of the religious viewpoint. But if it is claiming to be a Catholic school, parents are probably expecting that they're going to uphold Catholic teaching, and hence they're probably not going to be inspecting the material. They're probably not going to be looking at the books. They're probably thinking, well, it should all be fine, when it isn't. That's the issue. So there's a breach of trust here. So if a school is teaching stuff that is not in line with Catholic teaching, they're not being fair. They're being dishonest with the parents. They're breaking that bond of trust that the parents have with the school to do the right thing, to teach the right thing. And that's a fundamental issue.
I think this is a really important point, Eugene, that in our next letter, which we are revising our suite of letters at the moment because there's 5 and we're trying to amalgamate some. This is a really important point to put in the letters for the schools to remind them of their obligation to the Catholic Code of Canon Law. And if they're breaking the law and breaking parents' trust, that needs to stop. Yeah.
Well, you're not a Catholic school. That's the point. Like if you're not willing to follow this, then don't call yourself a Catholic ethos school. The parents will then know that you're not, and they'll know that perhaps I might need to send my child somewhere else. That's the point. So this is not neutral. This is black and white. And I know that this is not being upheld right now. The schools that are Catholic schools in this country that are taking the well-being books, and they shouldn't be taking them. So parents, alerting you, or if you're a teacher or board of management member, this is your obligation if you're in a Catholic school. If you're not up to that obligation and it's still a Catholic school, you might want to consider resigning your position and go somewhere else. I'm serious. Like, that's what I would be. If I was dealing with a Catholic school and the principal wasn't willing to uphold it, I'd be asking them to consider their position.
And Eugene,
I'd be asking the bishop
can you
to ask
comment
them to
on,
consider their position.
are the bishops aware of this law being broken with some of the SPHE material?
And so my bishop is, and the archbishop is aware, because I've written to them. And if you're in a diocese, you need to write to your bishop in that diocese, because if a Catholic school isn't towing the line on this, there's a problem, a fundamental problem. So this is Catholic teaching, and it's unambiguous. And if people aren't aware, we'll put a link to Dignitas Infinita in here, which covers some of these controversial issues like abortion, like gender theory. And it's very unambiguous. It's a black and white. There's no spectrums here. It's black and white. It's binary. So people need to live up to their responsibilities, and they need to be asked and reminded of living up to those responsibilities.
We'll be including this in our letter to the principals and boards of management to remind them of their duty of the canon law.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But as I said, it's a breach of trust with parents if you're not upholding this, because parents are expecting you to. And if you're not, then you're breaking that trust. So let's move on. And then on the theme of being careful, we're going to be approaching the stand-up week season, which comes usually at the end of October, start of November. We're going to have groups like Belong To and Shout Out. We're probably approaching schools right now. There's probably letters going to schools. There's probably emails going into schools, flyers, etc. Sign up for our stand-up week. Sign up for our quality mark. We've covered this in a separate video, and we've covered the reasons why you shouldn't have these groups in your school. So just a reminder.
And just to let everyone know, we always talk about the concern, but then we like to say, what can you do about it? We did a Belong To campaign, and those letters are on the naturalwomen'scouncil.ie website. There's a letter that you can send to your school with your concerns on Belong To, and on our Natural Women's Council YouTube channel, we've done a couple of deep dives into Belong To and why they should be nowhere near the schools.
So we've covered that. So just a reminder on that one. There's another critique of the World Health Organization standards for sexuality education. We've covered these extensively before. We're not the only people calling them out. There's a group in Brussels now produced this new document. Again, we'll put the link in the description. And you can see the issues, the same issues we've been calling out: sexualizing childhood, not age appropriate, this sex positivity notion, sex for pleasure, undermining family, etc. It's the same points we've been making, slightly different words, maybe some slightly different emphasis in different areas. But again, it's another justification. These standards aren't fit for purpose. They were heavily influenced by queer theory, as we've seen, by groups like International Planned Parenthood, and they are what they are because of that. And we shouldn't be accepting it. We shouldn't be. So just another resource to highlight that for you.
So thanks everyone for watching, and it's great. Let's focus on the wins, keep the optimism, keep the faith. We are seeing that this political woke agenda attacking schools, there are so many cracks in the foundation. The house is built on quicksand, and now's the time to really knock it down. So thanks everyone for watching.